Well, hey, y'all. Welcome to the When We Walk podcast, where this is a podcast where we discuss the questions we all ask as we walk through life. I'm Shireen.
I'm Micah.
Let's chat.
Okay, so the question of this week has been, do you buy the jersey or burn the jersey? When it comes to Harrison Butker and his speech.
Yes.
Do you buy his jersey? It has become one of the highest.
Apparently people are buying the jersey.
Oh, yeah. It's hit new records, new heights.
Do you know I didn't
Especially
even know who he was
Yeah.
until? Yeah. How many people actually knew who he was?
Yeah, I think people who watch football because the Chiefs are good.
That's true. Okay.
But yeah, or do you burn it? Which some people are like calling for him to be kicked out of the NFL, lose his job. Kansas City, actually, like the Kansas City Twitter page just said, just want y'all to know that Harrison Butler lives in Lee Summit or something, just to basically say he doesn't live in our city. Oh. Just as a way to kind of cancel him.
Oh, my word. So, how sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we feel a lot of feelings about this.
A lot of feelings about this.
My feed was so divided on him.
Really?
It was so interesting.
Yeah.
Which
that's like a healthy feed.
I guess so.
Yeah. I think so.
Because it was people who were like, I can't believe he said the things he said. He should be kicked out. The NFL should
cancel.
Yeah, cancel all of it. And then people who are like, way to go, stand up for what you believe.
This is my man, this is my pastor, this is my kicker.
I'm so excited. I'm glad to be a Chiefs fan. So it was interesting.
Yeah, it was.
So what did you initially, did you watch?
So
what'd you do?
Well, first of all, let's set it up because just in case anyone doesn't know what we're talking about.
That's true.
Harrison Butker, the kicker for Kansas City Chiefs, was invited to give the commencement speech at Benedictine. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, Benedictine College. In Kansas, which is a Catholic college. And he is a very strong Catholic.
Very strong Catholic.
And so he gave his commencement speech, 20 minutes. Some sound bites were taken from that just set the world on fire.
It went so viral.
Yeah.
And so many commentators.
Yeah.
Immediate.
Oh, yeah. Everybody has a reaction. So you asked me what was my initial reaction.
Right.
Probably not surprising, but I am so skeptical of what the algorithms try to feed me that I just don't. I almost never react to anything initially.
You
just
are
in
so
life.
even keel.
Just in life.
Yeah.
And that is not always a good thing.
Have
like
broken bone and you're like, I'll be okay.
Tornado siren going off and I'm like, let's wait for it to keep going. Yeah.
That's
so
true.
I don't
Which is good.
naturally react quickly to things. So I immediately thought to myself, this is probably not nearly as big of a deal as people think. And I just kind of moved on from it. And then it just continued to come and come and come and come. And so I decided to watch the whole speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I have my own opinions that are not being formed by
sound bites.
Yep.
What
about you?
I think I initially, of course, the ones who are coming through my feed, because I follow a lot of women, were all very angry women, first of all, with some of the comments he made. And so initially I'm listening to, I think I heard their commentary before I even heard his comments or his speech. Yep. And so I realized I was starting to form like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he would say something like that. And that sounds, like what an assumption he's making of women or things like that. Even Laylee, our 16-year-old, had caught glimpses or little sound bites, and she came in raging about it.
She was hot.
She came in raging about it, and I was like, but at that point, I had went and did the same thing. I was like, I need to take my own advice, which we talked about in a podcast earlier of how to fight fair or fight well, like same digitally, instead of letting it get me angry like some people do. I had went and watched the whole thing, read through. I have like his transcript. I was like, I want to make sure I heard what he said right.
Yeah.
And I have different thoughts now.
Yeah.
Totally different from what my initial emotional response was.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we hit a few high level.
Sure.
What was actually said. And then we can talk about our thoughts around it. So I think it's important. Context matters. And as a communicator, that colors my perspective on all of this, because I understand that context matters, not only the context of your whole speech, but the context in which you are speaking and your audience that you are speaking to.
Yes.
All of that really matters. And so you have a guy who's a very proud and devout Catholic, speaking at a Catholic college that he clearly has a lot of respect for, because he talks about that in his speech and how proud he is of their faculty and their staff and their culture and their environment there. And he's talking to college graduates who are also, at least apparently, identify as Catholic for the most part, because they're at this Catholic college. And so he's, I think in a context like that, you're probably going to try and offer up some life advice that is probably not what they're hearing in the classroom. So he's trying to maybe challenge some of the ideas that they have received over the years to balance some things out. And he also is self-aware. Like he said at the beginning, like, I've gotten heat before. He knew what he was stepping into.
This was not a surprise to him.
It was not.
He's done this before.
It was not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he holds the perspective that, like, if I'm getting heat, it's probably because I'm saying some things that matter, and that people need to hear. So,
and I think he even said, like, he's gotten more comfortable just saying what he really believes, and he's okay with that.
Yeah.
So he knew.
Yeah. So that was context.
Yeah.
Then you get into some of what he said. I mean, he got into critiquing priests. Well, okay, so he started the speech by saying, like, y'all have experienced leaders, bad leaders who have gone out of their lane.
Yes.
And I want to talk to y'all about how to understand where we are, how to move forward as both citizens and Catholics.
Yes.
So he's saying, like, I'm talking to you as Catholics, but also as citizens.
And with that lens.
Yes.
Like how we are looking at this world, and we are interpreting what's happening in the world that you're about to embark into. Let's put back on our Catholic God filter.
Yep.
And I actually thought he started really strong. Like he did not, I mean, he
jumped right in.
He jumped right in, but he was very, like, I think people are mad at, the piece they're most mad about is what he said about women. But he first, for the longest time, he kind of went after just leaders.
He went after leaders. Well, and part of it too
people
is
who were not doing what they said they were going to do.
And that are Catholic.
Yes.
And so that was kind of his motivation, is Biden is Catholic, and yet here's some of the things he's advocating for, some of the ways he's carrying himself. He talked about other leaders in our country who identify as Catholic and yet seem to be living apart from some of the real
not
basic,
holding to the roots of their faith or biblical truth according to what he sees and lives out to.
Yeah. So a very Catholic context, critiquing bad Catholic leaders to begin with, to try and help these students say, hey, what you're seeing is not necessarily probably the best example.
Yep.
And so both politically, and then he gets into the church.
Yeah, he
and
does.
He gets into priests, and he gets into the way bishops have removed themselves from really the life of the church. He made some comment about priests who, take matching. What is it? Did you remember he said get in matching outfits with their pets for the church director? I don't know who he was talking about.
I didn't catch that one.
But that obviously bothered him.
we don't run in Catholic circles, so we don't know all of the little intricacies of the things he was saying.
Yeah.
But
Talked about Latin Mass.
Yeah.
And attending Latin Mass, which I know nothing about.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of the Catholic context.
Yes.
And then he got into, though, I think trying to balance out these college graduates who are very career focused, trying to bring to them, but hey, don't forget what happens in the home matters. And that's the most, like, gentle way to say it.
Yeah.
He wasn't quite as gentle. And there was just a few, like, cringe moments for sure in the way that he worded it. But I do
think, going back first to the fact that he started with big level leadership and then in the church, like, he's trying to, you can tell he's trying to build some, like, big picture, like, the idea is getting back to the roots of our faith, and not letting the world shape your convictions. Like, let's get back to these convictions that we all have in faith, in our church or whatnot. And I actually was like, I'm proud of him for like calling out his church leaders and calling out some of the people that was like this, if you are, and he's charging, these students, if you're going to go out and you're going to be leaders in the church and outside the church, and you're going to carry your Catholic faith with you, let's raise the bar. Let's live according to what God has called us to live to. Yep. I thought that was really
and
first to say that before going into
that's
more
a great
point.
I think one of the things that is missing kind of in public discourse today is people are having to pick a side on everything. And once you have like established the side that you're on, you dare not criticize that side. And so you can't, if you're
with it, you're standing with,
and you have to
like for
almost
him, he had
cover
stand
up
with the Catholics.
And there is a credibility in my mind that comes when you can be critical of your own side in a way that's kind and gracious and loving and courageous, because it to me it validates a heart and a desire to say, I'm trying to see truth, and I'm not blinded by my bias and perspective. I'm willing to say even my own team is not doing everything right.
We might get
and
it
I think
wrong.
there's something to that, like that he came in rather than, interestingly enough, he didn't even hardcore bash culture.
No.
He really focused on, as followers of Jesus, how are we called to live?
Yeah. He's calling,
and staying in our lane.
He's calling his audience higher. He's saying, here's where we've missed it as Catholics in the church. And I want y'all are the next generation. You're bringing something new to our church, to our society, that we can level up in, and we can show the world that, no, God's called us to live differently. And the example you're seeing is not the example that God has called us to. I have to say, what I started with in the sound bites and got all angry about, listening to his speech from the beginning, he kind of started to win me over. And I was like, okay, I see, Harrison, where you're going. I like it. And then he got to the women's stuff, and that was a little more interesting.
And that's why we wanted to talk about this today, because he hit on some things that you and I talk about a lot.
Yes.
We've talked about on this podcast, that we've had many conversations with people about on a lot of levels. And I think that's more why we're talking about this today than just because it's out in the air.
Because it's out in the air.
Well, but it's a great conversation starter.
It is. It's a good conversation starter.
So
if you don't let it get you angry first.
Yeah, for sure. And you listen.
Yeah.
Slow to speak.
Slow to speak. There we go.
And quick to listen, slow to speak. So he really got into husbands and wives.
Right.
And fathers and mothers. And that was the stuff that got everybody hot, was what he said specifically about women. So I'll let you kind of recap that and then share your thoughts on it. Yeah.
So I have his little transcript because I don't want to misquote him. He really just went first into kind of calling the women. He did say, congratulations on your accomplishment. You should be proud of what you've achieved. I think he was aware. He's speaking to college graduates who've just worked so hard and paid a lot of money and had to work to where they've gotten to. So I think he was aware of that. But then he goes into, but I don't want you, basically he was saying, I don't want you to lose kind of your call to be a wife and a mom. And I think for me, that was where, especially because we just came off this conversation about singleness, especially because I have some very best friends in my life who are single women, who I know when someone hears that, and granted, we're assuming many of the women in this, audience are in their younger, maybe in their 20s, about to embark on life, still single, probably hoping for marriage. Many of them probably are. And so he was right on that part. You might, I venture to guess that majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you bring into this world. So he did say, I venture to guess, and that there is a large majority of you. Some of you might not feel that.
Yeah.
But I think what we hear is we hear that, and then we assume that is, well, that's the goal. And then he talks about his wife, which is great. And I think, and that's his lived experience, so we can't come against that. Like, we can't bash him for that. And he's using that as an example. But I think it was the comment at the end of talking about his wife where he said, that she embraced the most important title of all, homemaker. And he got a lot of cheers, actually, after that, and applause. And so my first thought was like, okay, well, that connected with his audience. It did not connect with the larger. A lot of people did not like that.
Why not?
I think because we live, well, first of all, we're on the other side of, women's lib and all the things. And women, I think there are a larger portion of women who like their vocation and who have worked hard after it. And I think, first of all, I do think we live in a culture that very much almost diminishes that role a little bit of being a stay-at-home mom, or to use his word, homemaker. I think there are people who do want that and who do feel called to that. And that is an important role in our society if you have the privilege, I would say it's a privilege to be able to do that, to stay home while one person brings in income. If you are a large family, that is a privilege. Not very many people have that opportunity. And there might be women who want it and who can't have that. So I think the danger becomes when he elevated that as saying one of the most important roles in a woman's life is this. What that says, I think, to number one, singles, especially in the church, and
that you'll never fulfill the highest calling that God has on a woman.
And I think that those are the statements for single people that immediately makes them feel less than and makes them feel like, well, I guess I will never please God because I won't get to that maybe, or I don't feel called to that. So in their minds, have I missed something? I remember I wrestled with that for the longest time because I didn't necessarily feel called to stay home with kids. It was kind of what we fell into in that season just out of sheer necessity. But I think it's okay. Like if that is your calling, that's great. But I think it's okay also to feel called beyond that too. Yeah. So I think when he made that statement, that made it very hard for a lot of people to get past anything else. And that then he went on to say how, wonderful she is, and it allows him to go after the things he's going after. And so I think he's aware, I would think, that it is a privilege that they live this way. Yeah. I mean, the way he made it sound like, I think that it sounded like that to me. Yeah. Yeah.
I think a couple of thoughts that hit me as I listened to it were, one, we live we have some biases. Right. When we hear this, we have to know that.
Yeah, we come in with,
in the words of Sveta Popidic, right? One of our Serbian leaders, we are all slaves to our culture.
We are.
So we need to be aware of kind of where we already are coming from when we hear something. And, there's one is our affluence. Right. And to be able to be a stay-at-home mom really is financially not possible for everybody.
No, it's not.
Especially globally. So when we start to say biblically, this is the way a home was designed to function, we have to be really careful there.
We really do.
Because that is a very affluent mindset. And you could look at, yes, a husband and a wife do have to take on different roles to accomplish different tasks to make sure life and home continue to move forward. But I think we have spent too much time and energy both dividing what is assigned to women, what is assigned to men, and then creating the hierarchy and who's above and who's below. I think we spent way too much time trying to push that into Scripture. I don't know that it's really that clear. So one, you kind of have that bias as we listen to that from the perspective of, is it really, are you saying does the Bible tell us that one person needs to stay at home while the other person goes and works? Not necessarily.
No.
And it doesn't even have to say which one, the husband or the wife. I think you can work it out differently. The second thing, though, I think is in a career obsessed culture. So several years ago, I remember reading an article, Skye Jethani, he said work is the new sex.
Oh yeah.
And that article just caught my attention because he, in a culture that during the sexual revolution, sex was everything, now has moved into now career is everything.
Well, because everyone's having sex.
We idolize and worship, the amount of money we make, the status it gives us in society, the place it gives us at a cocktail party when we're talking about our interesting life. The title that's on our desk or name badge or whatever. So we're so obsessed with that we then assume that staying home has less value on it.
Yeah.
Because we so value career.
Yes.
And now in other parts of the world where work is less sexy and much more grueling, one person being able to stay home and raise the kids and make the meals, it might be like, give me that job versus having to go labor out in the workforce. And so I think we are colored by, and I think as Christians, we just have to be careful not to overly Christianize the arrangement of the home.
I think that's good.
I think the big picture that Butker is bringing out is, don't forget that as humans, one of our highest callings is investing in the next generation.
Yes.
And for some people, that's directly raising kids.
Your children,
for other people,
family.
It's even for single people, it's how are you investing in the next generation? How are you giving your life away to the world around you? How are you not obsessing over your career and finding ways to give your life away to those who will come up underneath you? Like, to me, that's a good universal and biblical principle. Mm-hmm. But once we start to really define it by gender and by role and by, this has value and this doesn't have value, I just think we get, we kind of go beyond what Scripture is really calling us to collectively.
And I think that's what made everyone get all up in arms about this, is because we've culturized this, we've divided it, we've made it one is better than the other. And so every time someone brings it up like that, it just stirs all of that back up in you. I do think even the title of homemaker is very interesting. I think that alone is like, okay, well, what does that even mean?
Right.
Like, that is it could be interpreted so many ways, but I think people who go back to, well, that is what the Proverbs 31 woman was, or that is what, God called women to be in the home, and which I don't directly see that, like we've said, directly in Scripture. But even if it was, everything I've read about women who worked back then in their homes, they were basically running a small business.
Yeah.
I mean, really what it was. Like, if you read the Proverbs 31 woman, she's like going out she's like doing deals in the market. She's taking care of a home back then was like animals, all the like.
Yeah, you're bartering, you're raising things and selling them.
You're
and buying others.
You offer something to the neighborhood that someone else, and then you're trading back and forth. And usually you have staff or slaves from back then for some, and you ran your home in that way. You took care of other people that were beyond just your nuclear family. Like, there was actually no direct understanding of nuclear family in the way we understand nuclear family. It was so much bigger. They lived with multiple families in homes and took people in all the time and lived very neighborly, much more communally. And so if you were to use that word to be a homemaker, it would have had such a different context. If we really want to take that from Scripture than it does the way we view it now too. So I think we have to look at all of that differently and not let it like stir us in the way that it is stirring us right now. I don't know. Those are my thoughts. But.
Yeah. And so to me, the call to at the essence of it, to raise up the next generation applies to the husband and the wife.
Yeah.
And he talks about the husband. He goes on to say,
I was sad. No one
highlighted
that.
But fatherlessness, he dealt with the issue of fatherlessness. He didn't get deep into it, but man, the stats around absent fathers are huge, whether they're physically absent or emotionally, mentally absent. There is massive implications for when a husband is absent in the home.
Yep.
And so, he got into that. He didn't get deep into the stats.
But he did say you need to be part of your home.
Yeah,
you
and that
need
didn't
to
hit
be
the
invested
airwaves.
in your home, and it didn't. And I would encourage anyone who heard the clips and got riled up about the woman stuff, go keep listening and listen to what he says.
Yeah.
Because I think it is important. That is a topic, and he hit it, but everyone gets up in arms about the woman side, but he's kind of going after, guys, you need to be invested in a culture where men are not invested in their homes and in their families. You need to be invested in your home and your family.
Yeah.
So I thought it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, when you watch or read the whole thing, it isn't as sharp as it sounded from the sound bites, which kudos to social media and the algorithm and headline writers and all of that, because that's their job.
Real, that's what it's supposed
to do. To get eyes and to get engagement, and the more emotionally charged people get, the more likely they are to engage, and that's just it's just marketing. I mean, it's just we have to walk through this world with a healthy skepticism.
Yes.
Of what we're being fed, especially by people who benefit from our attention and our dollars. That what we're being fed is almost never the whole truth.
It's so true.
That we have to be wise, discerning, skeptical, not cynical, but a little skeptical, and be willing to listen to the whole thing. And I would say, have conversations like this.
Talk about it with people.
What a great thing to sit down, even with our kids, to be able to say, okay, because we have kids who love football, and we have kids who, our daughter who wants to go and do big
Conquer
things.
The world,
so maybe we need to have them watch the speech and say, all right, let's talk about this. How does this hit you? Because it really has become, the redemptive side of it all has become a great conversation starter.
Right.
If you're willing to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, and then have some conversations about, and I think here it comes down to is, whether you're single or married, what is the highest calling on my life? How would I define that?
Yep.
And then if you are married and raising kids, to have a conversation about, what do we value? Are we chasing careers? Are we focused on our children? Are we distracted by,
what is becoming our idol in our family?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it can become your children, or it can become your career, or these goals you set. So I think you have to present all of that before the Lord. But I think also to come down to the end, for me, after listening, when I listened to the very end of his speech, and he started talking about the Latin.
Yeah, the Latin
That's
Mass.
when I was like, oh, you are so Catholic. This makes everything you said make sense. And of course.
Because he's trying to pull them back to the traditional Catholic values.
And then I thought, this makes everything make sense. Of course, you and I am not going to agree with everything he says that comes out of his mouth. And that's okay. I'm not Catholic.
Right.
He was not charging me with that speech.
Right.
It just happened to go public. And for some, it called them, maybe it did. It was something God used that called them up out of something that they needed. And I think God can use those things. And I think he will.
Yep.
And we need to stop being so bunchy about it.
Yep. And be wise. And
yeah.
Think clearly. Okay. I love it. Well, great conversation. Thanks, Harrison Butker, for getting so many good conversations.
Thanks to his speech.
Every now and then I feel bad for him. And then hearing his speech and hearing him say, I've gotten heat before. He knew. He's fine.
He knew that people were going to talk about it. And that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So
self-awareness. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully this was encouraging for you and gives you some stuff to chat about, think about, question, challenge, wrestle with. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.